So I'm at a beach in Izmir, Turkey, and it looks like I'm having a holiday, but I'm not. I'm here to attend a conference, an ICETE conference, which is discussing formal and non-formal theological education. And there's been so much to think, so much to talk about, that I haven't had time to process it. But one of the ways that I've been processing this is making videos or sharing posts on Facebook, because as I talk about it and as I bring out some ideas in public, it helps me to think about some of the things that we are going through, some of the ideas that we are talking about. So one of the main ideas of this conference, and I didn't expect that it would become like that, is this idea about spiritual formation. What is spiritual formation, and how do we do it? How do we encourage it in theological education, whether it be in a Bible college or whether it be in a church? And it's been one of these topics that are very important to me. I really feel spiritual formation is a key. And yet, at the same time, I felt that I'm not really a professional in talking about spiritual formation. Like, I've not done much thinking about it as a technical subject. So I really appreciated the exposure to this topic of spiritual formation as a topic, as a subject to think about. So there's a bike going around on the beach. So as I think about spiritual formation, and there are many ways to do it. There are many ways to talk about it. There are many ways to study it and implement it. But one thing that struck me today was, how do we see it? How do we know that spiritual formation is happening? So what is the evidence of it? Now, this is not about assessment, because assessment is a separate issue. But let's say you want to say, oh, I have grown spiritually. What would that look like? And for me, that became an important question, not just for thinking about students, but thinking about externalization. How do I see it in myself? How do I see it in others? What do we look for when we are looking for spiritual formation, especially spiritual formation growth? We want to see growth. What are we looking for? Okay. Now, I would fall into the water here, so I'm going to turn around, shift hands, and go. It's actually really cold in Izmir, so that's why I've got this muffler and jacket and all that. But anyway, so externalizations. How do I see it? Now, we can talk about see it in the way we read the Bible, or see it in the way we have more prayer time or spend more time in church. Those are the typical markers. But what I found was that, what if I was to reflect in myself? What would I say for myself, rather than just looking at a student? And I decided to use, in this video, a narrative approach, which means telling stories, looking at my past to see where I grew, where I can say I grew, where I can say, yes, I grew spiritually. And of course, there are many, many, many ways. But there was one way that I know that I grew. There are three ways that I know that I grew. And so let me share 3 stories. So the first story happened in 9th standard to 10th standard. So in 9th standard, in 9th grade, in school, I remember myself being a show-offy kind of Christian without knowing I was a show-offy kind of Christian. Which means that I remember there was a prayer time in one of the rooms, and I went to the prayer time. I didn't really want to go for the prayer thing, but then I saw these guys meeting for prayer, and I said, let me join them. And I'm being serious. I actually thought I was doing God a favor by coming, and I prayed, God, thank you that I could come and be in your presence. But I was actually meaning, see how amazing I am that I am praying. How amazing that I am that I'm giving up my free time to spend time with God. That's the kind of Christian I was in 9th standard. But what's interesting is that if somebody was to look at me, they would see an external of a guy going for prayer. So good spiritual formation. But in my heart, I had bad spiritual formation. Means I was actually trying to show off. I was very aware of what it looked like rather than anything else. So that was 9th standard. But something happened in 10th standard, and I don't even know what all happened. But there was a big transformation in me in my 10th, and especially by my 10th, that by my 10th and especially by 11th, I stopped praying out loud. I lost my confidence in prayer. I reduced my volumes when praying publicly. In fact, I would not even volunteer to pray. I would hide and not hide, but I would quietly go for prayer meetings, but not really show that I am very spiritual. And it would look like I was not spiritual anymore. Like earlier, wow, he used to be going for prayer meetings, or he did this, or he did that. But by my 10th, I didn't have much confidence. I lost my spiritual confidence. And that for me was a big change, where I stopped trying to show off to God, and I started seeking God and trying to learn to love Him. That's what the change was. But that change was visible. If somebody was to look at me, they would see that I lacked confidence, that I lost my spiritual confidence. But I was in an internal journey to try to draw closer to God for God's sake, not for my sake, not so that I could get any points or something, but it was a search for God, and a genuine search for God. I really wanted to draw closer to God. Okay, time to turn around. And so so that's one story of the external markers being silence or lack of confidence, but it was a sign of change, a growth in my life of firstly being open about my spirituality, but now being hidden about my spirituality, but now my spirituality is more genuine. Okay, so that's the first story. The second story happened in college, where my first year of college was very bad. It was a very difficult year of struggle, especially spiritual struggle. And when I looked at the church, when I looked at the Christian community around me, I didn't like anybody. I didn't trust them. I felt many of them were fake. And I really felt like there's a scarcity of Christian fellowship here. And I felt so alone, out of sync with everyone, out of sync with all things. And my loneliness really just made me isolated. So a spiritual marker, like the external marker, is I was alone and I stayed by myself. And so yes, so that's one sign that I'm not spiritually mature, because I'm not connected with people. I was just going to college and going back home. That's it. Then in my second year of college, there was a slight transformation where it's not a slight transformation, it's a big transformation, where I went to a church service, and in that church service, one of the worship songs drew attention to how messed up my life was, and where I felt that God was telling me, look, focus on your life, how messed up you are. Don't focus on how messed up other people are. So that shift happened, where I repented. I felt, God, I'm sorry. I know I'm the problem, not the church and the people around me are the problem. And so at the end of my first year, I started engaging with people. I started going to youth fellowship. I started engaging with the world around me, especially the Christian world around me, because I stopped focusing on criticizing the church and started focusing on criticizing myself, but also improving myself. So I said, okay, grow within. And that was a huge change in my life. But that's not the only story. That's not the only change, because it will look like, oh, now Nigel is going to church. Now Nigel is going to youth fellowship. So yes, his spiritual markers have grown. But while that was happening, there was another thing that stood out for me, and was a friend of mine who was in college with me. He took me out of my comfort zone to meet strange people. I mean, he wouldn't call them strange, but like people I would never mix with. Some of them are not Christians, some of them from different cultures, and most of them who were so different from me, who didn't fit my mold of what is right, what is not right, what is comfortable spaces. And I think that was a huge growth in me. So what looks like a marker that, oh, I'm going to church, was not enough. It was breaking me out of my comfort zone of isolated community. If I only focused on my church community, it would be like I replaced one safe community with another safe community, and I would just be staying in a ghetto. Time to swap, time to be mindful of the beach and walk again. This is tiring. And so if I just looked at the church and the church community, that would look like I'm being spiritual, but that was not the only thing. It was me learning to live with, to become friends with people who are not like me, who are not Christians, who are not from my culture. And that, I think, helped me grow a lot, helped me to understand myself in relation to other cultures, other types of people, rather than the same kind of people that you will find in church or youth groups. So that was another growth thing that I'll say that. And why am I saying all this? I'll explain later at the end of the video. The third story happened in my workplace, where I like this girl. So it's a romantic story. So I like this girl, and she had just become a Christian. I mean, she was a Christian, but she had just taken her faith very seriously, had learned to embrace God in a very dear way. And a lot of times she and I would have conversations about God and loving God. And eventually we started going out. I really loved her. But then one day she broke up with me. And she said, I need to find God outside you. And she said, I can't be with you. I have to find my relationship with God independent of me. And I was really hurt, because I didn't think that was needed. I said, no, I can help you know God more, and we can have discussions, we can have Bible studies together. But she was very clear that she needed to find her own path. And it, like I said, it really hurt me. And that actually led me to become quite devastated emotionally. I felt abandoned, alone. It was combined with many other people who had started to become very critical of me. So I thought it was a rejection of me. And so it was a very painful time in my life. But eventually, after, as soon as she broke up with me, I joined Bible college. Now in Bible college, I succeeded like really well. Hey, sunset, can you see? Maybe not. It's very... So in Bible college, I really succeeded. I did well in classes, I did well in community life. So it looked like I was spiritually matured. It looked like I was a success. But my spiritual life was really broken. I was so alone, in so much despair, even feeling suicidal. And at that time, I had to recover my love for God, even as I had to get a sense of God's love for me. And that whole process was a very, very difficult time for me. So outwardly, spiritually, I look good. Inwardly, I'm not good. I really struggle. But that process, which took many years to get rebuilt, helped me to see the life of other people's spiritual life. So earlier I was only thinking about myself actually. So I was thinking about myself and my relationship with this girl I liked. But when I started being confronted by my own loneliness, by my own struggles, then I felt that firstly, yes, I need to fix my life. I also need to find God. But more importantly, I need to see how other people are finding God. I need to understand that. How are people doing it? What is their journey? And as I looked at that girl's life, and we kept in touch, we were good friends, I really appreciated her decision to find God outside me, because that is what I would want actually. It's such a good thing that, yeah, God, you talk to her, you are her God, you are her friend. Not, yes, I'm there, but that's the most important relationship. And so letting go of my needs or my desires and focusing on somebody else and what journey they are going through was a big shift and growth for me. That was the third story of growth, where I was now no longer just concerned about myself, but I started looking at other people and other people's journeys. Now, why am I saying all this? What's the point of this? And again, back to the conference about spiritual formation, colleges, assessment. Why am I sharing this? And one of the main reasons is, when I was in Bible college, the external markers I would pass all of them. I would succeed in it. But internal markers, which were not visible to others, I would fail all of them, all the internal markers. And so it was an important thing for me to say to myself as a teacher, when I became a teacher in Bible college, don't just look at what you see. Try to go beyond what is seen. Try to see the hiddenness of a person. So if they say they are good, they could be struggling. If they say they are struggling, they could be in the process of going through something good. So don't judge them by just their words. They could be in many phases of their life. So that was one thing that I learned. The other thing is, when a person comes in a Bible college, they're coming from a particular context and going to another context. Bible college is not the only thing. So when you assess a person in a Bible college for 2 years or 3 years, it's so less in the larger scheme of things. How do you assess a person's spiritual life in 1 year? And it makes us humble, and it should make us humble, that we have no right to assess the spiritual formation or the growth of a person in a Bible college unless we come with it with humility and a desire to help the person. That we want to join with them in their journey of self-improvement and God improvement, that God-word improvement. Sometimes at colleges we think like, yes, you are coming, you need us, we will help you to grow spiritually, and you need to show immense growth in these 2 or 3 years. But the student is probably coming from years of growing and heading towards years of further growth. And we are just a small part of the bigger picture. So it helped me to be humble as an educator, and I feel that other educators also need to be humble when assessing spiritual life of students. They are already in a journey, and they will be in a journey that has nothing to do with this Bible college. We have the privilege of participating in that journey with that student. And the third reason why I'm sharing this is that spiritual formation is a story, is the story of our lives. It's not 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, grade A, B, C, but it is our life. It is our entire life. It's how we are journeying with God, with one another, with people. I mean, I'm only talking about relationships. I mean, there is also spiritual life about holiness and righteousness and justice. But for now, I'm just focusing on relationship with God and others. That somehow spiritual life must be seen as a story, not as a 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. I am 60% spiritual, I am 40% spiritual. The numericals may be dangerous, but in a narrative sense, in a story sense, we are better able to understand what God is doing in the life of an individual, even ourselves. So that's why I'm sharing this. And I hope that this video is not very boring. If anything, put off the video and just look at the beach. Sorry, just put off my volume and just look at the beach. And hopefully you'll find joy in that. So with that said, I'm just going to turn the camera to the beach, and for a few seconds, let's just admire the view.